Breaking news today on Sekulow as we're suing Biden in a massive new lawsuit.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
We've got a lot to talk about today on Sekulow. First half hour, we're going to be focusing on the work the ACLJ is doing to protect your rights. And it even involves an ACLJ, one of our senior advisors. I'll get to that in a moment. The second half hour, we're going to get more into politics as well, with the DeSantis announcement imminent next week. And we want to hear from you on that. That'll be in the second half hour. So a lot to talk about on the broadcast. Let me get right to it. The ACLJ is filing a major lawsuit against President Biden and his administration today. We've been warning you of the deep state corruption. We've been talking about it all week and weeks on this broadcast on Sekulow, and how the deep state bureaucracy is, as you know, it's in the back pocket of the left. They basically work in tandem. It's like an appendage of the Democrat Party now. And that's a very, again, dangerous thing in our country. And how they put their foot on the scale of justice when it comes to conservatives and how they treat conservatives. We talked about the dual systems of justice that have arisen inside the United States of America. But now we have proof, yet again, and we're heading to federal court. When our own ACLJ senior advisor for national security and foreign policy, you know him, Rick Grenell, left office as acting director of national intelligence. He was the ambassador to Germany, but when he left his DNI, the left in the mainstream media submitted a FOIA very broadly, which is not supposed to how FOIA is supposed to work. If we sit one this broad, it'd take a year to get a response, and the response would be this was way too broad, you have to narrow it. But this is what they wrote. A left-wing media outlet, I think it was BuzzFeed. They submitted a FOIA for all of his emails and text messages, all of them, while he was serving as director of national intelligence. You would think of all the people that you might not get all of their emails and text messages would be the person overseeing every U.S. intelligence department. It doesn't mean that some might be subject to FOIA. We certainly file against the intelligence community as well. But that's about the highest bar when it comes to trying to get information under the Freedom of Information Act when you're asking for it from the intel community. But in the fastest response we've ever seen, the deep state handed over every single document requested by BuzzFeed and those media outlets with minimal redactions, under a year. They never had to go to court. We always have to go to court. And so your ACLJ has submitted a FOIA request for all of the Biden DNI, Avril Haines emails about what they did in this matter. Why did they just put all of his emails forward without fighting back on any of those issues? Why didn't they say, hey, this is too broad? What actual information are you looking for about Rick Grenell when he was acting director of national intelligence? So, on the top of that, we have uncovered, and this is new case law in D.C., in the federal court in D.C., a new way to approach FOIAs. Folks, this is groundbreaking, so I don't want you to miss it. There is an entirely new way. It involves the violation of the First Amendment and what we've been talking about, this two systems of justice, viewpoint discrimination, treating one requester different than another, a court has found is unconstitutional. So we're going to be the first to take this directly to the federal system, not just the municipality system, but to the federal system. Ben Cisney, a senior counsel with the ACLJ, is going to be joining us. He leads our FOIA effort. He will be joining us in the next segment to walk through how big of a deal. This is a huge deal in our FOIA work. It transforms it. Donate today. Support the work of the ACLJ. This is the kind of work we're doing. Donate today, aclj.org. We'll be right back.
Freedom of Information Act allows people to petition their government and ask for the background information as to why they came to a certain decision.
It's thousands of pages of paper, and in those thousands of pages of paper, you usually find a nugget.
We are entitled as citizens of the United States to know about how our government works.
Government agencies acting out of control.
They want to keep Americans in the dark. That's why it's incredibly important to have the ACLJ constantly pushing to find out what the background information is.
Do you remember the Iran deal? There was a video about what took place on that deal, and it was edited. And the edit took out the key part of what was going on. State Department, White House, editing videos to keep it from the American public.
We have exposed that in our FOIA litigation, and we do that every day that we bring these cases.
We took it to the IRS. No one ever does that. And because of it, it's a very weak government agency that used to be the scary government agency.
What the IRS was doing was violating the Constitution and statutory law. Because of the litigation we engaged in, it's a different agency. They can't do what they were doing before.
We've got the declassified list of Obama administration officials who started asking to unmask. They've been hiding behind in the shadows. These FOIAs bring them to light.
And all of this information came because we went to court to get the information.
The power of Washington, D.C. only works when the rest of us, the rest of Americans, are kept in the dark.
We may find one item of information in thousands of documents of irrelevancies, but we persist and we're on it every day of our lives.
The work that the ACLJ does matters. It matters to policymakers. It matters to ordinary citizens all across America.
Those of you that support the ACLJ, this is what it's all about at the end of the day.
Think we haven't been on this, folks? We've been on it. All right, folks, this is brand spanking new. This is a whole new way to look at FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act. And I want to give credit to Ben Sisney from our team, who is constantly digging through, trying to give us an upper hand when we are battling the federal government for documents that we are entitled to under federal law. The FOIA laws, the Freedom of Information Act laws put in place for these federal agencies a process so that we can get the information we want from those agencies with minimal redactions, with minimal exceptions, and yet the norm is they don't respond, and then you have to sue them, and then you're in court, and then it takes so long in court, the judge finally tells them you've got to start complying, and then you've got to keep fighting because they don't comply entirely. That's wrong. That's not how the law was ever supposed to work. But I want to go right to Ben Sisney, our senior counsel, who is in Washington, D.C. And Ben, let's start with this initial FOIA. We filed it 2 years ago when BuzzFeed News got all of this information about our colleague Rick Grenell when he was serving as Director of National Intelligence.
That's right. And they got that information, and the best I can tell, what I would describe as record-breaking time, at least as far as I can tell. It's hard to tell specifically because they didn't even have to file a lawsuit. And as you know, reporting of lawsuits and complaints and these litigation on the online databases is really the only way from the outside you can tell exactly what's happening. But the best we can tell, they got it in a record-breaking time. They got, I want to point out something too. They got it without qualifiers like subject matter and things that we're constantly made to comply with. They got it without having to file a lawsuit, which we, as you pointed out, really essentially always have to do. And so we do what we have to do to get it. And the double standard was just obvious. And I remember you and I and our team discussing this back then. The double standard was just obvious, but how do you prove it, right? And so through our practice here with the FOIA litigation, let's send a mirror FOIA. Let's send something similar. Let's see what happens when we do this. And nothing happened. And as you mentioned, over 2 years have passed, and still nothing. Not even a letter, Jordan. Not even an acknowledgement. And over 2 years. So you know what? It's time to take it to the next level. We're doing that. We're filing that today, as you mentioned. But also, as you pointed out, this new angle, this new approach.
To jump in on this I think is so important, is sometimes it's worth holding these FOIAs because you want to do enough research to say, you know what, is there some other way we can go about our FOIA practice? I think, Ben, you've found a way that may revolutionize the FOIA practice as we move forward. Tell people about it.
I hope so, Jordan, and that's the goal, because ultimately the goal for our practice is transparency and government accountability, getting information about what our government is up to Americans, to our members and our viewers, and so to expand that and try to take that to the next level using some recent case law that we came across here in this district, recognizing the validity of a claim in federal court against a government actor for violating the First Amendment by basically treating a FOIA requester differently based on the content or viewpoint that requester has. As you know full well, that's a subset of First Amendment jurisprudence. And violations of the First Amendment can take many different forms. And this particular subset involves denying, treating somebody differently or denying a benefit or a right, something you're entitled to, which the FOIA law provides, based on their viewpoint or the content of their expression or what they're asking for or what they do with the information they get. And as I was reading that court opinion, I was realizing, wow, that's exactly what we're wrestling with a federal agency, not the municipal government of D.C., which, as you know, is quasi-federal, quasi-municipal. But why can't we do this with the federal agency? Because that's exactly what they're doing. So we're doing it. We added a count 2, and that's part of what's getting filed today. And I really look forward to that, especially getting to the discovery stage.
In my hands, folks, you can see it, and we'll get it online once it's filed. So I would encourage you to check out count 2. I mean, the violation of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution in a FOIA case because of a lack of response. This is something brand new that we are doing at the ACLJ, and I think has ever been done directly in the federal matter. I mean, Ben, to me, what it does is it puts viewpoint discrimination right at the heart of the FOIA request, which opens up even more documents that could be available under FOIA. Like, why are you dragging your feet? Are you dragging your feet because you don't like the viewpoint of the ACLJ, but you do like the viewpoint of BuzzFeed, who was going to beat up on Rick Grinnell, but you don't like ACLJ because they may be beating up on the current ODNI?
That's exactly right. And the channel for that could be another follow-up FOIA request, which we very well may do. But more specifically, and I think what excites me the most is the opportunity to get into the discovery stage, to get that information under the auspices of a federal court order and the discovery rules, and really to have the opportunity to expose and hold an agency accountable for exactly the kind of behavior you're discussing today and that we've talked about, and that's been an ACLJ issue for as long as I can remember. And it was part of the whole underlying rationale of our FOIA practice and government accountability project that you and our leadership put together so we can help serve the American people as a conduit of information and accountability for our government. And this is another opportunity in a new way, as you're pointing out, for us to be able to do that and take this whole thing to the next level.
Ben, I have a question for you. You got a lot of comments coming in. Maybe people aren't as familiar with the FOIA process in general. Can you walk us through a little bit of what you're doing when it comes to the FOIA situation and what makes this one so different comparatively? Because you look at it, people hear the word FOIA thrown around a lot. I don't know if people understand the process and also the time it takes to get a lot of this done.
Absolutely, Logan. So the FOIA process in general involves a letter, some issue. We become aware of some issue or circumstance or news reporting of something. We put together a letter. We send it off to the agency. You have to wait about a month. Usually they respond, but it's in a way that's not compliant with the law. That gives us a green light to take it into federal court. We do that. And after a series of litigation steps that are required in federal court, the agencies start producing the records that we were entitled to. and we go back and forth. They redact this, or they withhold that, or it's taking too long, and those kind of issues. But we have the power, the supervision of a federal court judge overseeing that, and then we'll take that all the way through the process. But this one is different because it's not just a violation of the FOIA, of the law, the public records law that we're claiming, but actually a violation of the First Amendment.
And when we say First Amendment, Ben, I mean, that's the First Amendment rights of the ACLJ. That's the First Amendment rights of our supporters who donate to get these FOIAs done and our members at the ACLJ. Because as we allege in our complaint, that the defendant, ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, gave the ACLJ's FOIA request unfavorable treatment because of the ACLJ's inclination to criticize the agency. It is the core of viewpoint discrimination that we believe now can be applied in the FOIA litigation process, and that could fundamentally change things in our favor in a huge way.
I'm confident it will, and I look forward to the opportunity to litigate this and to build this out even further and take this forward. And like I mentioned, to get to the discovery stage where we can take it beyond the allegations and the facts that we've already compiled, but get more specifics, more, the internal communications and things that we would only be entitled to in discovery. Because remember, Jordan, there are things that we can't get through FOIA that we can get through federal discovery. And that's part of the goal here. We want to get to that stage and really test this claim. See what they've got. They've got to show their cards. That's part of the point here. And it's such a great merger of our public, our government accountability project, but also another key ACLJ issue, the First Amendment, speech and expression, another way to hold our government accountable, connected to the FOIA practice, but also the United States Constitution itself.
Folks, I think you can see how excited we are about this new opportunity amongst FOIA. And I was talking to Ben late last night and our team late last night because I know you're the type of audience that we could explain this to. And Ben, I appreciate you joining us while you're in the midst of this to walk people through the importance. It is that important. It fundamentally alters in a positive way the way we can get information that we are entitled to under law from federal agencies, that they can no longer discriminate against our claims because we happen to be conservatives or not in line with the party in charge. And they can't just dump everybody else's, like when some liberal group wants Rick Renell's info and they just dump it with no court case. So we've got examples, we've got history, we've got facts, and now we're taking it to court. Support our work. Donate today.
When we see something, when we hear something, when we're concerned about an issue, we don't just talk about it. We do something about it. And that goes to our Government Accountability Project.
If we allow leaders in Washington, D.C. to make decisions behind closed doors, unaccountable to the people, then we are going to get skewed and corrupt decisions.
There are lots of other places that do lots of important work for America, but the ACLJ has taken up a lane which is irreplaceable.
The Freedom of Information Act, that's a statute that allows us to get information from the government. Starts with a letter from our offices in Washington to these agencies. And it says, give us this information on these topics. And generally, they don't. And then we go to court.
We go through a series of lengthy negotiations back and forth about what they'll give or what they won't give. We may get tons of information that's redacted, and we have to then go back and say, you redacted too much. We can't really find out what you're giving us because it makes no sense. So it goes through a process of litigation.
That is how you get information, and that office is going to be more active now more than ever.
The ACLJ has been extremely active in vigorously seeking to hold these bureaucrats accountable. We have filed hundreds of FOIA requests. We have received over 20,000 pages of documents in our litigation.
Holding them accountable, holding the Biden administration accountable so that all Americans are able to have faith in their government.
We will up our efforts. We will not stop.
You're finding a nugget in a gold mine. Occasionally you'll come up with something that is really a bombshell, but you have to persist in doing it, and that's what we do.
That's a little bit of what we do through our Office of Government Accountability, and of course that comes under our Office of Government Affairs. So your support of the ACLJ supports all of that.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. We are excited about this new opportunity to hold the government accountable. It's not all we do at the ACLJ, but it's certainly an important role, especially when you see, just think about this week, the amount of executive agency abuse that we have learned about, whether it's the CIA impacting and influencing our elections with that phony Hunter Biden letter on the laptop. When you look at the fact that the FBI has not cleaned up, of the Durham report, which I wish that more people were held accountable. But the idea that investigation was started when they had no evidence to start the investigation on, all they had was a salacious report from an informant that shouldn't have been trusted. And even if that was trusted, they didn't do their homework before opening up a full-scale investigation and accepting it all as 100% fact. So we know what we're up against in Washington. I just want to say again, kudos to Ben Cisney from our team, because I think he has unlocked, and I'm not kidding about this, an entirely new way to approach FOIA. Because if you can show, and in this matter involving Rick Grinnell, we can directly, that when one group asked for Rick's information when he was Director of National Intelligence, all they said was all of it, emails and text. And they got him within a year, no lawsuit. When we ask for the current ODNI's information, and you say all, we hear nothing for 2 years. Okay, we were kind of planning this. And ultimately, they would usually then write back when you file a lawsuit, which we now have, that you can't be that broad. Well, then we're going to point to the other one and say, well, why didn't you do that then? You didn't ask for them to be more specific. And by the way, this delay that you have made us incur is a violation of the First Amendment. So you've got two major problems, DNI, and you can't play politics. You can't deny us the info we're entitled to as Americans because we happen to share a different policy view than your current administration. So we are fighting back there aggressively. Logan, let's go to the phone.
Yeah, let's go to Mary Ellen, who's calling in Illinois. You're on the air, Mary Ellen.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm so excited to hear this because we've been praying for you all. And I'm one of the facilitators for the 24/7 National Strategic Prayer Call. And there's a couple hundred of us. There are people from all over the country who call in and pray and it's been going on every hour since November 11, 2016, praying for the president and, you just name it. We've been praying, and many people call in, not just me, and we pray for different things that you all are going through or working on. And when I hear this, because lately we've been praying for divine strategies as you work on your cases. So when I heard this, it's like, praise the Lord, that's an answer to prayer. So just know that many are out there across the country praying for you all.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Yeah, I think that's something that's really important for our listeners to hear, and I always appreciate your calling in, is there is a big part of the ACLJ in the history of the ACLJ, and it's something I always say, which is if we can change the playbook, we can change the world. And I think that is a big part of this, which is finding new ways to take on issues that maybe seem set in their ways. Whether it's the way we handled religious freedom in the old days by coming up with it being a free speech argument, it's a very similar way. So as you said, looking for new strategies, and as I said, if you change the playbook, you can change the world. I really do believe that.
We're doing it right now with life. Because for so many years, my entire life, Roe, and my dad's entire life, the entire life of the ACLJ, it was Roe hanging over everything we did when it came to abortion. You had to work within those bounds and all these different partial birth abortion bans. And did that violate? Did that what? Now that's all been cleared. And so we had a huge victory yesterday in North Carolina through ACLJ action, where we actually mobilized grassroots protest through ACLJ action and overrode a Democrat governor's veto of a law that would prevent abortion after 12 weeks. The current law was at 20 weeks. So we have saved lives, saved children's lives in North Carolina because of your support to the ACLJ. But we are, as you said, Logan, having to do it differently. We have to, again, courts have shifted. places that used to be tough courts are better courts. The Supreme Court is very different. State courts are different. And so all the places that we're looking right now, you might have noticed that just in the past week, we filed 3 new major cases at the ACLJ. I mean, we filed in Nevada in that case involving the pornographic monologue. We filed in Washington State, that involving, again, the park volunteer whose private vehicle's got a Trump sticker on it, a vehicle he does not use while he is working for the Park Service. He used the Park Service vehicle, and when he's a volunteer, he parks it away so people don't even see it. One person saw it, complained, and now he was told, take him off or you're fired. And we're fighting back for him. We are taking an aggressive approach when it comes to parental rights. So we want to make sure you know. Because I think under the Trump years, just to be quite honest with you saw us representing some very high-profile people, like the President of the United States. Can't get much more high-profile than that. And I wouldn't be upset with you to think, well, maybe the ACLJ's gotten too big for me. I don't like that the work that they're doing, but I wonder if they can do my case or my issue. We absolutely can. The Trumps and those things are one-offs. What we're here to do is represent grassroots Americans who may have a tough time even affording an attorney or finding an attorney willing to fight these battles. So we'll come in, and oftentimes we'll get an attorney locally, but we handle all those costs for you. You just have to be willing to fight back against the wrongdoing. So if you are, and you feel like you've got one of those situations right now, I want you to contact us at aclj.org/help. And every time you do that, it's a real ACLJ attorney who responds. Yes, there are some legal matters we cannot do as the ACLJ. But if we can do it, we will fight with you. And the best way for you to know if we can do it is for you to ask. aclj.org/help. We're looking at cases right now involving counselors who are Christian in the public school systems in Massachusetts having their license potentially revoked because they have their own beliefs when counseling young people. You can imagine what those issues are, abortion and gender. But again, you can't exclude a group of counselors because of their religious beliefs. That's a basic constitutional law violation, and they're willing to fight back. So that, again, is something you want to pay attention to through ACLJ. We are there for you. We are there for you. If you think, like we were talking about yesterday, the FBI is trying to infiltrate your church, if you have someone show up kind of out of the blue asking a lot of questions, asking questions that don't make sense, like, are there any groups inside here that seem extreme? Anybody here who seems like they want to start some push against the federal government? You need to contact us at aclj.org/help. If you're a pro-life activist, you feel like you're being harassed by the IRS or FBI or both, contact us. aclj.org/help. We know how to handle these situations, and we know how to win. aclj.org/help. And then, Logan, of course, I can go through all of that and say we can do all of that because we have a great group of donors that makes it finances available so we can.
Yep, you can do that today. Be part of that team. Be part of our team. Go to aclj.org right now. If you don't get the second half hour of the broadcast on your local station, find us broadcasting live right now on Rumble, as well as aclj.org and all your favorite social media platforms. We'll be right back with the second half hour, Sekulow.
The ACLJ has a 30-plus year history of fighting on behalf of you, our members, in support of life,
abortion's murder,
religious liberty.
A Turkish court has freed American pastor Andrew Brunson.
Justice, personal freedom, and constitutional government. Our freedoms are under attack. Now, more than ever.
We are not going back ever! Abortion is healthy!
Yet another week of violence.
They use their power and influence to push deeply un-American causes that threaten to destroy our country. Abortion on demand, socialism, inflation, cancel culture, weakness in the face of our adversaries. We owe it to our kids and grandkids to defend the things that make this country great. It's time to take the gloves off and uphold American values. Go to acljaction.org to learn more.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
Hey, welcome back to Sekulow. We are taking your phone calls, 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. So we want to spend that first half hour. We don't always do it, but on the work of the ACLJ and just really some groundbreaking new work we're doing under the FOIA practice of the ACLJ, the Freedom of Information Act practice, now that we can include in some matters a First Amendment violation, a viewpoint discrimination element, which brings in a whole host of new discovery as well. I think this is groundbreaking. I think we are the first to do it this way. I've not heard of another organization, conservative or liberal, that works on FOIAs. There's nothing against them. I just don't think they may have done the research to see how this would apply, or they might not have had the right case. But because of Rick Grinnell and the attacks on him constantly coming in from the liberal media, trying to get every email he ever wrote as DNI, every text he ever sent as DNI, he's in a unique position. When I sent that email to him, he said, let's do it. So it's great to have even team members at the ACLJ willing to go to court, willing to say, yeah, I want to fight back on this. But you don't have to be Rick Grinnell to fight back, Logan. And that's the important part of the ACLJ story always.
No, a lot of times it's just easier to explain some of those big picture stories. But we are handling individual cases every day, whether that's legally, whether that's in media. You saw what we've done in Nevada. It's become a local story there. Now it's becoming a national story. We're bringing a lot of attention to it. So we can utilize our incredibly strong legal arm and our incredibly strong media arm to really get this in front of places that other organizations simply can't. There's a lot of other great organizations, but they maybe don't have the breadth that we have in terms of being able to really infiltrate the media, infiltrate the courtroom, and really get in there and win for you. And if you're one of those people who, like you said, who may need help, and it's within our scope, we always say that obviously there's certain things we're not handling at the ACLJ. If you need, family law type stuff, that's not really our area.
Divorce attorneys were not the right place to go.
That's not us. But you can see that clearly on our website, aclj.org/help. It'll tell you. And if it's within our scope, or we even think it may be within our scope, someone will reach out to you and talk to you.
Yeah, let me give you an example of one you might not think. We're working in Missouri right now. They have this tax. It's a 1% tax on people who work inside St. Louis, Missouri. Now, a lot of people have not returned back to St. Louis. So St. Louis tried to reform their law to say, well, even if you work from home, if you're working for a St. Louis company, they can still take that 1% tax. And the process to get that refunded is very difficult. So we haven't fully engaged it yet, but I just want to give you an example of yet another issue, the ACLJ. Again, your financial liberty. And we are, again, an organization always fighting back for the people when we believe they are being taxed illegally and wrongfully. So, again, if your city's got those kind of policies in place, we'd love to hear about it. aclj.org/help. Out in Washington State, you've got one of the most extreme laws we've seen passed, where if not even a teenager, a child between the age of 10 and 17 runs away, and they go to a care facility, and that could be a Christian facility, and now they have on the books that the care facility doesn't have to immediately notify the parents. They can if they think they can reconcile, but they don't have to. And they can actually provide, at no cost to the child, an abortion or a gender change. Not just the beginning, but the entire process. If the child wants that. I say child because it's 10 to 17. We're working with potential clients there. So you are going to see a lot of new ACLJ action in the courts because we are fighting back against the extreme left.
A lot of new people join us on Rumble and all these new platforms each and every day. I saw someone just posted, hey, does the ACLJ do any notable work? I think maybe in the next segment you should break down some of the 30-plus, nearly 40-year history of the work of the ACLJ and some of the ones we have done. But yes, we are deeply involved at the highest level and in the individual level.
All right, folks, we'll be right back on Sekulow. We're going to get into DeSantis We didn't have time yesterday, so I want to get your calls on that. Are any of you 100% with DeSantis yet? By the way, no judgment from us if you are. We really just want to hear from our audience.
In my time in service, both as the CIA director and the Secretary of State, I watched the good work that the ACLJ was doing here in the States and all across the world.
The ACLJ's work at the UN, overseas with the European Court of Justice, is incredibly important.
We have on our team lawyers, non-lawyers as well, that are policy experts. They're all engaged in foreign policy issues.
We have been focused on protecting the nation state of Israel, particularly before the United Nations.
We don't shy away from the battles that are going on at the UN and just complain about them. We actually try to go in and do something positive and actually affect change.
The risk of an incomplete or unsolid relationship within the United States of America and Israel is real.
Israel is very important to the ACLJ, and we will always fight for Israel's rights.
We had a series of cases at the European Court of Human Rights, primarily dealing with religious liberty.
And as Secretary of State, I saw this too. Nations that had more religious freedom were on firmer footing. They had better democracies.
America has always been the world leader in religious liberties, in freedom of conscience and freedom of speech.
We've taken the First Amendment, and that has been our cornerstone. It's to defend the rights of people of faith and others that are having their rights abused.
We not only hold our government accountable, but we hold other governments accountable.
You have to keep the battle going when it's not cool anymore, when it's not the number one story on TV. You have to actually be committed to fighting it out, or else you'll never win.
The ACLJ's front and center on this, whether it is going after the deep state, whether it is litigation that we're engaged in. Your support of the ACLJ enables us to do all of this. Go to aclj.org today. That's aclj.org.
Sekulow, we are taking your calls at 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. We wanted to broaden it out because it looks like we are less than a week away from Ron DeSantis entering the presidential race. We talked about the Sekulow Brothers podcast, but we haven't had time to talk about it on our larger Sekulow podcast, Sekulow broadcast, which is both on terrestrial radio, Sirius XM, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, so many different places you can go to listen or watch. And I really want to give people an opportunity to let us know, are you already 100% in with DeSantis? That's question one. Are you already 100% in with Trump, or are you in between? And I say that because I feel like that's probably where most people are. I love Tim Scott. I love Nikki Haley.
Yeah. Tim Scott formally announced today.
And Tim Scott did. And listen, would I like to see him on the rise? Sure.
Absolutely.
But I feel like right now it feels like the choice is, if DeSantis does do what he's, it says he will do, that the choice is kind of feels like Trump DeSantis right now, at least.
Yeah, right
so I'd
now.
love to hear from you on that. Give us a call at 1-800-684-3110.
We'll take one in a minute, but I do think that is true. People are seeing the fact that DeSantis has made the decision. I believe the decision is made. It is happening. It would be a major shift for it not to happen next week. It's not like he's refuting the claims. That means stuff is at the printers. The shirts are being made. The signs exist. A lot of the campaign materials are out there. So, yeah, I think it's pretty safe to assume that DeSantis will be announcing next week, barring something wild. I think it will happen. You did have Tim Scott. And look, what I've said, I don't care really who you support, whether it's Trump or DeSantis or Tim Scott or Nikki Haley. I'm just interested to see a field of people actually trying to get our votes. And we're not just having a 100% already decided. Mainly because I find it entertaining. I enjoy a debate. I enjoy the election season. And if we don't even get some fun Republican debates, I'll be disappointed just as someone who's a fan of politics, who's a fan of watching it. If it's just Trump again, great, no problem, whatever. But it's not going to pay the same kind of electricity in the season you have of getting to watch all these different debates, getting to see conservatives talk to other conservatives, which I always think is important because that's really the mainstay here. It's not about whether you're going to vote. Most of the people, 98% of people probably know if they're voting Republican or Democrat. Now we need to figure out who you're going to vote for in between. Let's go ahead and go to Warren, who's calling on line 1 with his thoughts. Warren, you're on the air.
Hey, Hey, thanks for taking my call, guys. I encourage everybody to support you. I do as much as I can, but I like DeSantis. I think he'd be a great president, and I think he'd be a great vice president. But honestly, I think we need Donald Trump, President Trump, for 4 more years to straighten this mess out, and then 8 years of DeSantis.
Yeah, it seems like that would be a perfect world, right? I mean, it does. And listen, it's not that that couldn't happen. Trump could win the primary, could win the White House, and DeSantis could come in a close second, decide not to join the administration, can't be VP unless they changed one of the
laws is that you can't leave from
Trump
the same
would have to
state.
change his state residency again, which I don't see him doing. So they can't be president, vice president, but you certainly could see where, because DeSantis can serve out his term as governor, that takes him basically into when you'd start campaigning for the next presidential cycle. Because I do think it's a good problem to have when you have a few very strong candidates on the bench. Because I'd add Tim Scott to that. He might not be getting the same kind of attention nationwide, but I've seen his events across the country, and he's doing great. He's also raising a lot of money. But what I would say is that when you add that if we can somehow get him through this process without DeSantis being totally destroyed by Donald Trump, I would love to see Trump and then go into DeSantis. I think a lot of people are there.
I think people felt that way maybe about a Ted Cruz. They thought maybe that just the Trump, you want to say attacks, but the Trump, language towards him maybe did hurt him. But that maybe with the short term. Long term, we've seen Ted Cruz be very successful and kind of been able to win that crowd back over. With DeSantis, I do think it's different when it comes to a vice presidential candidate. Even if he could, I don't think he would. I watched a video that Sean Spicer put out yesterday, and I agree with him completely, which is that's not really who you want as your vice president. Someone who could kind of, not that he would overshadow Trump, but has that same kind of energy and gravitas. You need someone, not Mike Pence, but you need someone like Mike Pence. Or honestly, for Biden, you see why he picked Kamala Harris, though I think she'd be completely ineffective. Someone who is not going to overshadow the presidency.
Donald Trump, you'd be looking at people like Tim Scott.
Yeah. Calm, under pressure.
Very good with the economic issues and business community. Trustworthy. People really like him. Kind of a steady hand. A very different personality.
I think he'd be good.
And again, there's others. I'm not trying to exclude other people that are. I have a lot of friends.
I just don't see DeSantis being that. I don't see him coming in and being even wanting to really take the vice presidency. At that point, be a governor of Florida, one of the biggest states in the country,
and then run again.
And then run again when you have the opportunity. We're still screening some more calls. You can give us a call at 1-800-684-3110. John's calling from the state of California. John, you're on the air.
Thank you for taking my call. I've been listening to you guys for a long time and donate because of what you guys do. You really bring to light true news. And you guys were just talking about Trump and the different candidates, and it's pretty simple. I'm a businessman. I'm a real estate broker. Trump, I relate to him because he's a businessman. He doesn't look at it like a politician. He doesn't really care. He's going to do what's best for the country. And if anybody watched the 4 years that he ran it, the mistake he made, he didn't clean the people that were existing there. He got rid of some of them, but not the ones that went behind his back and what have you. I think him getting into the office again, because you learn from mistakes. I don't think he'll ever do that again. And some of the stuff he said, okay. I got buddies that they're staunch conservatives, and they said, he could have said it a little bit different. Yes, he could have. But look at what he did. Look at what the man accomplished. And I applaud you guys because you're very fair with all candidates. But I think right now he's the winner. And I'm not.
The polls show it too. I mean, so John, you're right, and I think that it's set up for a unique election. And I didn't know if we were going to be there 6 months ago, but I think we are, where people could once again put aside maybe some of the idiosyncrasies about Trump that I don't love the tweeting, or maybe he's a little too brash for me. But you know what? Maybe we need a little bit of that rhetoric when dealing with Putin and Xi.
I think that
and just kind of someone who feels like really strong, really tough, the opposite of Joe Biden, especially with inflation out of control and a U.S. economy faltering.
I think the town hall was a wake-up call for a lot of people.
Yeah.
They realized that they did miss that personality. They did miss feeling like there was a secure. and just could also felt like when he said stuff like, I'm going to end the war in Ukraine and Russia in 24 hours, you're like, oh, well, that's a breath of fresh air. You haven't heard anything like that for the last few years. So to have that was a bit of a eye-opener for me, even, as someone who is excited about having a new group of people potentially running. I went, okay, well, those are some of the words that I like to hear, and I kind of believe it coming from Trump.
It was interesting. We got a comment in about ACLJ's legal work.
Yeah,
I was just going to go through quickly.
Yeah, I'll just set up. There's thousands of you who watch online who maybe are just joining us because we've only, Rumble or something like that's a pretty new place for us to be broadcasting. We've been doing this show for 27 years with our dad, and the ACLJ has been at this since the early 90s, really the late 80s, early 90s. So we've been at it for a long time, doing a lot of great work. And someone asked, well, do they do anything that's important? And I think I wanted to
These are
to give
just the Supreme Court cases we've done at the ACLJ. Board of Airport Commissioners versus Jews for Jesus. Board of Education versus Bergens. U.S. versus Coquinda. Bray versus Alexandria Women's Health Clinic. We had to re-argue Bray. Lamb's Chapel versus a school district. The National Law Journal, twice named. Sekulow is one of the most influential lawyers in the United States. That's our dad. A Sheikh versus Pro-Life Network of Western New York. There was another Supreme Court case. American lawyer named Sekulow as the Distinguished Attorney Group, the Public Sector 45. There's Hill versus Colorado. These are all SCOTUS cases. Santa Fe School District versus Doe. Operation Rescue versus National Organization for Women. McConnell versus FEC, where we took down part of an unconstitutional provision of the FEC provision of McCain-Feingold. And Gentala versus City of Tucson. Locke versus Davie. Elk Grove versus Newdow. Time Magazine named our dad one of the 25 most influential evangelicals in America and called the ACLJ the powerful counterweight to the ACLU. We did Van Orden versus Perry, Gonzalez v. Carhart. That's, again, a partial birth abortion case. U.S. versus Williams, Gonzalez versus Planned Parenthood, Pleasant Grove versus Summon. And that does not include the 3 cases we did on behalf of President Trump at the U.S. Supreme Court. That is just our U.S. Supreme Court work. That is not our international court work, our appellate court work, or district court work, or state court work. That is just the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yep, we're going to be taking a lot of your calls. A lot of you have called in about your thoughts on DeSantis and Trump. So I'm going to tell you we're going to take as many of those as we can coming up in the next segment. So keep calling if you get a busy signal, which I know is rare to hear these days. You can actually hear a busy signal if you call us sometimes. Go to aclj.org, go support the work, and continue to be in the fight with us. We really would appreciate it, especially right now, heading into the summer and heading into a big 2024. Give us a call, though, right now. There's a couple lines open. 1-800-684-3110. Going to say it slower for you. 1-800-684-3110. We'll be right back.
Thanks to your support of the ACLJ, we have had many victories.
The report is coming out. It shows that not only did Tea Party groups get more scrutiny, but so did a host of other conservative groups.
It was something that no one could believe our government was even capable of doing, and now they were admitting it.
It's one of the most significant wins in the ACLJ's history. To take on the IRS and win, for the ACLJ, life has always been a top issue.
Barbara, I am here at this site because there are thousands of people and millions across America that say abortion's murder.
When you're fighting for the life of the unborn, you're on the right side of history, you're on the right side of law.
These are young people in their 20s and 30s that are doing this and fighting for life to beat back the abortion juggernaut.
It's very important that we remain hopeful that the courts that the Trump administration was able to impact will give us good rulings that are based in law and sound reasoning.
This is one of the social issues we're winning.
There are historians that point out that religious persecution is at its highest level since the first 3 centuries when the Roman Empire led religious persecution.
A mid-state pastor's family is fighting to bring him home.
We are getting my husband after 7.5 months.
Turkey should not get away with holding my father one more day.
When Brunson was finally released, who meets him at the airport at 2:30 in the morning? Rick Grinnell.
I saw Pastor Brunson walk down the stairs of the plane. I was filled with emotion. I told him that we were praying for him. The American people never forgot about him.
I'm thankful, I'm grateful, and actually I'm astounded
We need your help as we continue this work here in the United States and around the world.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. We are taking your calls too. 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. Want to get into a little politics. I also want to do this. If you are watching on Rumble right now, we are just about, I think it's 300 people away from getting to 200,000 followers on Rumble. So click that follow button. I know there's enough of you watching right now that if you just click that follow button for us, we can get to 200,000. We don't often say that and put a lot of weight into that because, again, but it'd be nice, and we'd really appreciate it. It doesn't cost you a dime. You just do it. To get us to that number, 200,000, we would really appreciate it. We'll get right back to content. So we've asked people about DeSantis. We've asked people about Trump. And we're focusing it on DeSantis because the leak that went out is that he is going to announce his campaign next Thursday. He's going to launch a presidential campaign. Tim Scott formally took his from an exploratory committee to a full-blown campaign. So it looks like the field is getting bigger. One of my takeaways, I think Logan agrees, is that I think Donald Trump does best when he is in a bit of a fight. It focuses him. It gets him ready for battle so that if he does get the nomination and he is up against Joe Biden, he's in the best fighting form possible. So more like 2016 Trump than 2020 Trump, who didn't have to go through that process. But, Logan, let's go to the phones.
Yep, let's go ahead. Let's go to first Janet, who's calling from Florida on line 1. You're on the air.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Love your program. Would just like to say that we like Trump. We voted for him in our household in 2016, again in 2020. I'm from Navarre, Florida, near Pensacola. We love our governor, DeSantis. We love him here. So I think Trump needs to be very careful how much he slams DeSantis, because it might make a lot of Floridians really angry, and I know he needs this state.
Janet, as someone who spends a lot of time in Florida, as property owner in the state of Florida, I've seen a lot of my friends who have expressed similar sentiment, who have said, we're big fans of DeSantis. I don't know if I really want this fight to happen. They've honestly been a little even concerned with DeSantis running because they don't necessarily want, like you said, for him to be completely torn down by all of this that could come.
Now remember, he's going to also fight, Janet, against Donald Trump. So he's going to take swipes at Trump, and Trump is going to respond. I mean, he has every right to do so. So it does impact Florida voters uniquely because that's your governor. What is also interesting in Florida is that most of the congressional delegation in Florida endorsed Donald Trump because they said they've had such a hard time working with Ron DeSantis. Now, that would not have been Ron DeSantis. It would have been his staff. So I'd like to hear more from people, too, like on that. When you've had issues with the state and you've tried to contact the governor's office, was it like impossible? Did you feel like you weren't being treated right? I mean, because we hear this theme a lot. I don't know how accurate it is. I think maybe there's obviously some communications issues at the top. I mean, members of Congress from his own state should be able to get meetings with him and phone calls with him whenever they need them.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of mixed feelings on that, a lot of mixed thoughts. I've also seen a lot of people come out who were pro DeSantis and then honestly have got involved in the Disney thing and are a little concerned about that because of how, look, we saw yesterday, Disney pulled out of their big project, bringing thousands of people to the state and bringing two things to Central Florida. I think there are some people who look at that and go, great, we don't want them here. I think there's another set of people that go, this is hurting business in the state of Florida. Especially if you're not necessarily a social conservative, there are a lot of people who are not social conservatives who voted for Ron DeSantis because a lot of his lockdown situation, which by the way, I had a lot of conversations because there were things that I did not like about the original lockdown situation in Florida. People give him a lot of credit. I think he deserves a lot of credit for the way it was treated. Like I said, you had those theme parks in Central Florida opened within 90 days of the original lockdown in March. That was pretty impressive. But you had situations like me who has a house there who I rented out. I wasn't allowed to rent it out while the hotels were allowed to open and thrive. So there were some kind of issues there early on, but a lot of people struggled early on to figure out really what to do in this situation. So I don't think it's necessarily one or the other. I'm excited DeSantis is in it because mainly I think it's going to bring some needed debate and value to the next 6 months of the election, even the next 6 months to a year. You'll actually have President Trump and Governor Ron DeSantis pushed on issues that are important to us, not just liberals looking at them and going, "You're bad."
And it means that the Republican candidate, whoever that is, will have a lot more time in the media than Joe Biden because there is an actual primary occurring. If there was no real primary, they would just cover every once in a while. But if you got real active debates and real active campaigning, then it'll be beneficial to whoever arises out of the Republican field because they will have gotten the attention from the media, which the media has taken off these, and so has social media has taken off the limits on Trump.
A lot of them, yeah. I mean, you may see some pushback, but we can no longer but before, we couldn't play a clip from President Trump without YouTube potentially taking us down. That has been lifted. It's happened on Facebook and all of them. A lot of that is gone because they called it platforming. But when I look at what's happening in the state of Florida, and I think we should take another quick call, I think it's pretty interesting to see. A lot of people are asking how deep is the bench in Florida? What happens if DeSantis is gone? They actually have a big group of people in Florida who could really step in and do a great job.
With a strong Republican Party.
Some great people that we really like here. Let's go to Victoria, who's calling in New Jersey. Victoria, quickly, you're on the air.
Hello. Thank you so much, Jay, for taking my call. I am a woman from New Jersey. I also voted for Trump, and I support him. I am a staunch conservative, and I'm very thankful that he brought us pro-life conservatives to the Supreme Court and brought us the safety of our babies. But I also am offended by a lot of what he has said against women. And I do believe that we have a very horrible old man in the White House now. And I'm also fearful that as a woman, he has offended many other women. And the battle will be in 2024 of two old men. And as a woman, I think that with a lot of never Trumpers that are going to be voting, I would like to get us into a more moderate. We got to get it that we're going to have a strong, young, conservative man. And I think DeSantis has a very strong, conservative, moral backbone that nobody would ever be able to say that he is anti-woman, that he is offensive to women.
Jump in right there. I mean, he has been the most aggressive on the abortion laws, on the trans laws, on the drag queen laws, on the banning of books.
If you're a conservative woman, I think is what you say.
If you're a conservative woman.
That's more, I think, what she was saying. With some of the people who have had
I'm
problems.
not upset that he is.
People that have had problems with Trump, a lot of them had it because of personal stuff. Not necessarily just.
I get that.
That's more, I think, what she was referring to.
I get that. But I think if you're use the word moderate once. And that's what triggered me. I was like, he is not a moderate, Ron DeSantis.
No.
And he is not going to get moderate votes. He, in fact, might get less moderate votes than Donald Trump.
I think that's true. I saw some people yesterday going, "Hey, I don't like Trump's business stuff, and I don't like him personally.
He doesn't push a ton of social policies.
But I don't think he's evil." And they're like, if you're a hard leftist, you think a lot of the social policies coming out of Ron DeSantis
it's interesting.
are
it's very
evil.
Interesting because in some ways they're very similar. In other ways, they are not. And so we will see how that contrast is made, where the tone is kind of similar. The tough guy, of governance is similar. Do what I want, get done what I want to do, and DeSantis has done a good job that in Florida. I would love to have seen that DeSantis could kind of finish out the term, and because I think he would be a great president too. I really do.
Well, we'll see what happens. I'm excited about it. I hope you are too. We'll be back next week with more on Sekulow. You can obviously find us archived later on ACLJ.
We talked about at all the ACLJ work we talked about. Go to aclj.org, and if you can, donate so we can do even more of that work.